Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great beginning to your week out there. Here to bring you the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Monday. There is a chance of strong to severe storms across northern sections of the country. We'll talk about that, get very detailed, talk about the highest risk for this threat of severe weather. A lot of tropical moisture rising out the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be affecting areas pretty much the Gulf states, especially states like Louisiana. We'll see some higher impacts from this, so we'll speak on that. We'll give you some information about this heat wave that has already been kind of flexing its guns out there, if you will, over the last couple days. But today, really into the rest of this work week, it'll get downright miserable for folks like in New England. We're talking about temperatures in the triple digits for certain areas in New England, so we're going to speak on that. We'll actually have a timestamp up for that. We'll give you an update on the tropics, and we'll just cover everything in this video like we typically do. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It's huge in these slower times where my channel typically slows down, and this summer is definitely more of a typical summer. Last summer a little bit different because we had those weird severe weather events across the south, and I think I do have more viewers across the southeast than I do really anywhere of the lower 48, just because that's where I started this channel talking about weather, and just because I'm from South Carolina also, which is in the southeast. So but this summer more of a typical summer. You got most of your severe weather that's pushed to the north. We're starting to get some low-end tropical activity. So just a typical flow of things as we cruise right on through June. It's about to be the 4th of July. It's pretty wild to think about it. But if you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. So let's start this off looking at water vapor loop. We don't do this as much, but I think this morning is a great time to do it because you can see what's going on water vapor loop pretty well. So I'm going to draw on this, and my cursor, if you tuned in to last night's video, was giving me a hard time, but hopefully it'll do good for us in this morning's video. I checked it ahead of time. So if you notice, the flow is kind of going like this and then shooting back up, and it actually has a little swirl to it. That is our upper trough, or trough of low pressure, but in general, trough is digging down as far south as down here, and there's a flow going like this. This is what we call basically a southwest flow. A 500 millibar jet is screeching across this area, and this is what's going to drive a strong to severe storm threat across the northern plains and areas of the upper Midwest. The flow is going just like that on that arrow I drew. And then you got a ridge that's riding all the way up in here, and you can actually see the white colors, which indicates more moisture in the atmosphere. Not necessarily clouds, it probably is, but more moisture in the atmosphere. And you can see how it kind of rises through here, and then it kind of dips down into here and actually does a little swirl like that. But anyways, that is our ridge built into this region. This will continue to really strengthen across the northeast and really have its highest anomalies, if you will, and just be the strongest right over the northeast. So your hottest, most stagnant air will actually be centered over the northeast as we get deeper into this work week. And you can see down here, you see all this tropical moisture. This is beginning to rise north into the Gulf states. So basically right here in the middle, this is typically where we have the network of our energy, kind of our road network of our energy, where it cruises through between the trough and the ridge of high pressure. Hot, cooler than average temperatures, more so cold. In fact, a winter storm ongoing right now in the higher elevations of Idaho and Montana. So I know it's a lot of aero activity. I hope that made sense. But if we actually compare this with what's going on radar, see the big white area right here on your screen? It makes sense. There's a lot of moisture right here. In fact, we got moisture right in here, and if you compare that with a water vapor loop, we got a little bit of whiter shaded color into here, and then you see the whiter shaded color here, which, if you're wondering what the kind of the doled out color is, more of the black and dark grays, that is drier air. And sure enough, we have absolutely no moisture in the southwest, and we have a little bit of moisture rising into the Gulf states. And there's our winter storm ongoing. You can see the little bit of a swirl in the northern Rockies, Pacific Northwest, and you can see blue on the map. It's mid-June. We got blue on the map. Pretty wild. Not totally uncommon, but it certainly happens out here for sure. But this is what's going on radar. A lot of shower and storm activity rumbling through the upper Midwest, areas of the Great Plains. We got this spin that started off back here in the Midwest yesterday that's been cruising through the lower Great Lakes region throughout the overnight hours. We got some storm activity into southern Ontario, a little bit of rain shower activity in Quebec, and there's that snow falling here. Well, watch as the atmosphere begins to recover in this area today. But watch as warnings and advisories. The map is littered with it. If you're wondering what the orange is, that's heat advisories. The burgundy color, excessive heat watches. This dark pink, almost purple color, that's excessive heat warnings. It is going to be very hot today in like the state of Ohio, surrounding states, even the West Virginia area. It's going to be pretty hot in the Northeast too, but I think the real heat really gets going tomorrow. And in fact, they already got excessive heat watches up for what's to come. I think we're going to get excessive heat warnings. I mean, I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you a little teaser. But like forecast highs Thursday in like southern New Hampshire, 102, 103 degrees, guys. Ridiculous heat for New England standards for sure. Heat advisories down here. This is just pretty much a typical thing this time of the year. Red flag warnings are starting to get dry in the Four Corners region. Flood watches are up for just a lot of rain expected, and it continues to fall up here. Minnesota, areas of North Dakota. Winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings across Idaho and western Montana, and it's getting pretty dry across the Valley of California too. Some gusty winds to boot with it. So a little bit of a fire danger, red flag warnings. For sure. Southeast looks pretty quiet. This could change, especially in Texas and Louisiana. We'll probably get some flood watches issued, especially in Texas, over the next 24 to 48 hours. Excessive rainfall outlook. There's a slight risk up here, which means there's at least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being reached within 25 miles in a given location. Down here and up here, very large area up here. So there's going to be a small risk of flash flooding with this. Storm Prediction Center outlook. This could change. We could get a bump up to an enhanced risk sometime in the later outlooks. As of now, very large, kind of spaced out weirdly, slight risk. Stretches from central Wisconsin all the way down here to the far northwest corner of Kansas, northeast corner of Colorado, into Nebraska, all of the state of South Dakota, portions of the state of North Dakota, and then the far southeast corner of Montana, northeast corner of Wyoming. What is this driven off of? Level 2 out of 5 risk. Tornado risk highest near the surface low, and we'll talk about that here in a second when we get to this timestamp. But there is a 5% risk of a tornado in northeast. That was weird. Happens sometimes. Northeast Colorado, southwest Nebraska, small section of Kansas. 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. 2% risk in the green. This does include areas like Minneapolis, higher populated areas. So definitely a risk of tornadoes with this setup. Wind threat. Remember, this is the severe day that's been highlighted for quite some time now, since last week. I think it was highlighted first at like day 6. So, we've been kind of watching this day for a while. We just have to see how potent it is, if you will. But in the yellow area, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And there is a threat of significant hail in the black outline region here. There's a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. In this entire yellow area, it's a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger within 25 miles in a given location. So the largest hail threat and the largest tornado threat is down here. But we continue to move this forward. Let's talk about the southeast first. Most of the southeast, that's fine. The immediate southeast region, which I typically say is like Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas. Some people wouldn't even include Alabama, but some people would include all the way as far back as Louisiana. But anyways, enough of that. A lot of tropical moisture surges into the state of Louisiana, even into like the southern half of Mississippi. We'll even get some organized thunderstorms in the Boot Hill, Missouri. Basically right here where Arkansas, Tennessee, and Missouri connects. Could get some organized storms. I do think we'll get some widespread thunderstorms in the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. So if you're vacationing up there, definitely expect some storms. Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, definitely some stormy activity this afternoon for sure. The immediate Georgia area, Florida will get a break today. Most of the Carolinas will get a break outside the storms in North Carolina mountains. But most of the tropical moisture is down here in Louisiana and surrounding states. Just about everybody else, a lot of sinking air, not a whole lot going on as far as moisture. I made a comment for my South Carolina, North Carolina folks yesterday. If you did not get rain Saturday and Sunday, the chance is significantly lower throughout the rest of the week. So I didn't get rain, so the grass and the lawns out here in my neighborhood is starting to really, really get quite dry. But hard to complain when there's other areas of the country that go weeks without rain. So Not the biggest deal in the world. But this morning, we're getting these showers and storms. I think they'll become a lot more widespread, just zooming into Louisiana. This is around 2 p.m. A lot of widespread shower and storm activity. Can't rule out a little spin up, a strong to severe storm, but most of this, the biggest threat will just be heavy tropical rains. The atmosphere will be super saturated, so it's going to squeeze out every bit of moisture. Could get some storms as far north as like Meridian, especially Jackson, Mississippi. Widespread storms, though, for the southern half of Louisiana especially. And yes, some of these will get all the way to Houston, but I think for Houston, your most rainy days are out ahead of us, getting into tomorrow onward. But some of these pop-up showers and tropical kind of downpours will make its way all the way into eastern Texas too. And then it just continues. It's a very rainy Monday night in the southern half of Louisiana. Flooding threat will be there. And then tomorrow morning we'll probably have another day where we'll probably do it all over again. But I do think most of this begins to shift more so into Texas as we get into tomorrow. Rainfall between now and tomorrow morning. We could get some rain also in the Panhandle of Florida, Mobile, Alabama, Southern Alabama, and then, the Mississippi Delta, inch of rain, very possible. But, 1 to as much as 3 inches of rain down here for the southern areas of Louisiana, like Charles, Thibodaux, Houma, Baton Rouge, New Orleans. This is where most of your rain will fall, but Gulfport, Mississippi could get a lot of rain too. So heading up to the northeast. Listen, today, weather-wise, we're getting some showers, but this will quickly, won't be a factor. Might have some lingering showers along the coastal regions of like Maine. I could get an isolated shower or storm in the far western sections of New York State, northwestern PA. Some pop-up downpours are possible in northern VA, West Virginia, if you're lucky soul out here, because it'll be quite hot. But in general, a lot of sinking air, dry air. Whatever pops up here in like Ohio, you're going to be very thankful, because the state of Ohio is going to be baking today as far as temperatures, but not very widespread. Just some showers, pop-up downpours dancing around out here across Ohio, western PA, West Virginia. Very possible, but not a big deal. The big deal is the temperatures. This feels like temperatures, not actual air temperatures, but it'll feel like around 100, maybe as high as like the low 100s, especially once you get into the immediate city areas, the urban areas that really hold in a lot of heat. But guys, look at West Virginia. Heat indices. The heat index will be over 100 degrees in certain areas. Very hot in Kentucky, Indiana, lower Michigan. And then western PA, feels like temperatures will be in the mid to upper 90s. I know this isn't too crazy, but for you guys' standards, this is quite hot. Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio, the heat index will probably nip 100, 102 degrees a day. Hot up here into Detroit, Cleveland also, Indianapolis, very hot conditions. Now, you move a little bit further, to the northeast. Now, don't get me wrong, it'll be pretty hot. And let's just go to actual air temperatures today, and let's go to today. It's going to be pretty hot. This is pretty hot for interior northeast standards. We're going to get into the 90s. Maybe Rochester will hit 90 into the low 90s today. Finger Lakes region, it'll definitely, you'll be wanting to hop in your pool today. 80s, 90s in New York City area. But this is nothing compared to what's to come. It really isn't. This is just kind of an appetizer compared to what's to come. So a very warm day across the northeast, but nothing compared to what's to come. We'll talk about that here in a second. And in Maine, not even as warm as this area, but it's going to get hot in Maine. The south central U.S., we've already talked about Louisiana, but we're going to get some storms that kind of get pushed out from the Gulf of Mexico inland into Texas. We could get some storms around Houston, down to Corpus Christi, all the way down to Brownsville, Texas throughout the afternoon. This will try to work pretty far inland, but I don't think it'll make it very far before they weaken. The atmosphere is still pretty dry in Texas right now, so a lot of this moisture just sort of dries out. But different story as you head up the Mississippi River. Could get some storms in the mid-Mississippi Valley, western Kentucky, western Tennessee. A little bit of storm action is possible. An isolated strong to severe storm, a supercell is possible in the high plains of western Texas. Cannot rule that out. Just very conditional threat, very, very isolated risk here. But this will continue, and we'll go on and just take it all the way into the overnight hours. Oklahoma, most of Arkansas, Kansas, for the most part, looks quiet, except in the northwestern portions of the state. We'll take it all the way to tomorrow morning, and it's pretty quiet start, but I do think that dramatically starts to change tomorrow throughout the morning and afternoon in the state of Texas. But all in all, the southern plains is pretty quiet. Now, different story up in the north central U.S. A big plume of moisture, shower and storm activity cruising through the upper Midwest right now, the northern plains. This will continue. We're going to get a little bit of storm activity in northern Wisconsin, the UP and Michigan, some downpours. I don't think we'll get anything too crazy, but some rounds of heavy rain, some rumbles of thunder will cruise on through the UP and Michigan this afternoon. We could have the refiring of some storms down here near like southeastern Minnesota into the central portions of Wisconsin. Some storms could cruise through. These could reach strong to severe limits. So be aware of that in the northern half of Wisconsin. Widespread rains just kind of linger around in central Minnesota, areas of the Dakotas. And then we watch for the redevelopment of a lot of energy. And guys, this doesn't really get going until like, I would say, closer to midnight. Well, I would say 10, 11 p.m. We start to get some storms forming here in South Dakota. A lot of widespread activity in Minnesota. And then the big area of energy cruises through the eastern half of the Dakotas, especially North Dakota. And I do think we're going to have a very loud wee hours of the morning up here in northern Minnesota. But a closer look at all this. Okay. A lot of action going on this morning. We take it to about midday. Scattered shower and storm activity. Nothing too crazy, I don't think, from this in areas of southwestern Minnesota, South Dakota. This will rise north, bring some shower and heavy rain activity across central Minnesota. A lot of widespread shower activity across North Dakota. And then we'll stop it here. This is like 10, 11 p.m., right? Some big storms start to get going in South Dakota where a lot of a lot of humid air is able to rise into this area. Stable conditions more so up here, I would say, but very unstable down here, and especially Nebraska. The thing is, in northeast Colorado too, the thing is, do we get any storms that actually develop? The latest long-range HRRR model says no. We're not even going to get anything to develop into this prime atmosphere down here in Nebraska. But up here in South Dakota, we definitely will. An eruption of storms cruising through central South Dakota. If I just called South Dakota Nebraska, that's not what I meant. I apologize. But central South Dakota, big storms. I mean, this is like 11 p.m. midnight. So, if you live in this area and you're tuning in, be aware of these storms. A very stormy night in central to eastern North Dakota also. Damaging winds is possible. Very large hail. And even a tornado risk. And then this cruises through the northern half of Minnesota. So does anything get going down here? You notice the HRRR model said nothing really got going. But we'll talk about this area here in a second. But you look right here. This is for what happens this morning throughout the early afternoon. This is what happens later this afternoon to this evening to the overnight hours. This is the updraft velocity swath. This indicates rotating updrafts, stronger updrafts. And it's highlighted more so where the storms do fire in North Dakota and South Dakota. But you notice not a whole lot fires up down here in the 5% risk area. If we do get storms to fire, you would see stuff here. And I do think we're going to have a tornado threat if anything fires down here. And I think it could. Like I said, these short-range models are not always, they're hardly ever the actual solution. In fact, there never are. This is just guidance. The significant tornado parameter does show the potential, though. All right, and remember, this just indicates the higher the number you see on your screen, the better the ingredients for tornadoes. And notice how it spikes. There's a surface low right into here. It really spikes along a boundary separating very hot, humid air and not so hot, humid air. Okay? And it really spikes along that boundary point south. I mean, the significant tornado parameter gets into the teens. It gets very high. And in real life, it probably isn't this high, but it really just shows in general the guidance that, hey, the ingredients are going to be there in this area. All right, but does anything fire in this area? I mean, this is like 9, 10 p.m. Surface low right in here somewhere. Significant tornado parameter really spikes. I mean, it maxes out the color code right here, right? But does anything form? If it does, we can have a chance at an isolated strong tornado out there, EF2 or higher. I really do. So we just got to watch this area for sure. So. But moving out west, I'm not showing the broad area. I know I'm cutting some people off in northern Cal and the Pacific Northwest, but there's nothing going on in the Southwest really. But snow is falling in the higher elevations of Idaho, even Oregon, and definitely western Montana this morning. This will continue. Some gusty winds. We'll get into this afternoon. Look at all this action. In fact, you might as well just zoom into Idaho here. We getting into this afternoon, and a lot of action, even in the lower elevations, like, Karen, I know you're up here in Montana. You might get a mixture. You gotta let me know. Let me know what you're seeing up there. But definitely a chilly rain, even where you're not, under any kind of wintry alerts or anything like that. But we get into this evening, still some heavy bursts of snow in the higher elevations rumbling through. And I do think as we're waking up tomorrow morning, still some energy kind of coming down from Canada. But I do think it begins to simmer down somewhat. But snowfall between now and the rest of this event, several inches to over a foot of snow will add up in the higher elevations of Idaho and Montana. Some truckers going through these areas are probably going to be like, dude, what in the world is going on? And I would be the same way. But even the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming, a little bit of snow could add up from this. But certainly a hefty, very, very late season snowstorm. You almost could say it's an early season snowstorm. I made a poll a couple years ago saying, what's the cutoff between considering the 2023-2024 winter season, and then you got to start considering it the 2024-2025. Of course, I was talking about different years then, and some people said it was after the 4th of July. Some people said the start of August, but that is an interesting take. I would love to hear y'all's opinion on that. I might do another poll on social media again on that. But anyways, yeah, hefty snow event. But temperatures today, very hot in Ohio. The Ohio Valley will be the core of the heat today. Compared to your average temperatures. I know you see very hot temperatures in the southeast, but guys, this is nothing. This is typical summer stuff. The real heat comes for the northeast over the next couple of days. You can see where there's a boundary separating cooler air, 60s and 70s up here in the upper Midwest, with very hot temperatures in the Midwest and the plains right in here, 90s, 80s here. And then there's that boundary once again, a little bit of plume of warmer air up through Wyoming into southeastern Montana. But the real heat is in the central, the southern high plains, much cooler air across the northwest and the northern Rockies. I mean, it is pretty chilly. And some of this is starting to ooze into the valley of California too, so much chillier of a day. I wouldn't say chilly, but a cooler of a day, 70s and 80s, and just typical summer stuff across the desert southwest. So, guys, this heat wave is going to be... I think it's going to be record-breaking. We're going to break record highs, so you can call it historic. But you see the dark burgundy colors here. This is where the strongest of the ridging is in place, and we'll start off tomorrow afternoon. And this is going to continue just to flex over the eastern U.S., but the hottest temperatures will certainly be positioned over the northeast. Just because you see, I know you're probably thinking, well, wouldn't it be down here in Tennessee? And it's going to be hot down here too, but this actual center, closest to the center of the ridge, is really right over the northeast. And this will continue to flex into Wednesday, into Thursday, into Friday, and then maybe it starts to kind of level off some as we get into this weekend. But big time heat expected because of this ridge. And you look at actual air temperatures just today, not too bad, right? A nice day in Maine. Look how it dramatically changes. Your high temperatures go from the 70s to the 90s in Maine in one day. Okay, look how hot the temperatures are in southern New England, mid to upper 90s. I mean, the valley region's getting well into the 90s between the higher elevations of all the mountain ranges in the northeast. And then we get into Wednesday. I mean, folks, it is getting hot. I mean, look right here, and let's just go on and zoom into these areas. Not to ignore everybody else in the northeast, but Maine. Look how hot it's getting in Maine, guys. I mean, Caribou going for the mid to upper 90s Wednesday. And then we get into Thursday, folks. Cooling off a little bit up in Maine. But look down here in Massachusetts. This is what blew my mind when I was looking at this morning. Going for 103 degrees in southern New Hampshire. Areas in Massachusetts. Low 100s. Insane heat, guys. Starts to relax a little bit in the Friday. Then it really relaxes into this weekend. And I think Thursday could be the hottest day. Wednesday could be the hottest day for some people. Thursday could be the hottest for others. But it is going to be hot in the northeast, even into the mid-Atlantic. So just take the safety precautions needed for that for sure. Now, an update on the tropics. Let's make sure we don't have another update here. We do not. So I could actually see this dropping, but as of around the 1 to 2 a.m. update, this area is still a 30% chance. In this area, there's still a 30% chance of something to develop. A tropical depression or storm within the next 7 days. So we'll watch this. This will happen probably in the next 5 if it does happen. But model guidance is really getting kind of fuzzy on this. I wouldn't be surprised if this drops from a 30 to a 20 sometime today. So we'll watch for this. Still a 30% chance of developing. Now this still has a 70% chance of development in the next 7 days. It has a 60% chance to develop in the next 48 hours. So above a 50% chance just in the next 2 days into a depression. And a lot of people ask this question, what do you mean chance of development? I mean, it has in this case, a 70% chance to develop into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. Tropical storm would be a named storm, which will be Alberto. That'll be our first name if this takes it. There's a chance neither one of them does. In fact, the chance I think is increasing a little bit that neither one of them takes it. So we're still searching for that first name storm, but as of now, we don't have it. Okay. If we look at the satellite and we really zoom into what's going on down here with the area of interest that has a 70% chance of developing, just your perfect example of what we call a CAG, a Central American gyrum, which basically is a huge broad area of low pressure over Central America. Sometimes it pops off consolidated vortices, pieces of energy on either side of Central America, whether it's over on the Atlantic or in the Pacific side, and then sometimes they develop into a tropical system, and that is what this is going to try to do. And if you look here, guys, you can actually see a spin here, and black might not have been the best color to use, but there is just a very elongated spin over this area right here. Okay, literally the definition of a broad area of low pressure. So you see these, explosions of colors right here showing up in like whites and pinks. Basically, and we'll have to look right here. If you look right in here, once you start to get into pinks, it's the higher the cloud tops. So once you see the whites and the pinks, those are higher cloud tops, okay? More so like the yellows and blues here and the greens, that is a lower cloud top. So the higher you see these cloud tops here, the more deep convection there is in place, and there's a lot of it going across Central America. So the system, the area of interest up here really is not showing up on our screen yet, so there's really no point in trying to show it on the satellite. But we compare model guides, look at the latest GFS. Let's just start off this evening. Big area of moisture in the Gulf of Mexico. Watch out, it pops off a low pressure here. But guys, I want to note, tomorrow morning is showing a 997 millibar low pressure. That's in the next 24 hours, guys. Showing a 997 millibar low right off the coast of Texas. But there's also areas of energy right in here too that it could latch on to. Okay? But it takes, tomorrow, this area of energy and the GFS and surges it into South Texas. Makes landfall as something. But there's also areas of energy you watch down here embedded in this huge Central American gyro. This big broad area of low pressure. GFS has actually reattached the idea of a very small, compact little tropical baby system out here. And it takes it and cruises it Thursday morning at the same time. A lot of tropical moisture affecting areas of South Texas. But it's kind of two things going on one time. I know it's hard to focus on both. But a lot of tropical moisture continues to surge into Texas, making it maybe as far west as like New Mexico. And then, GFS wants to remove the day. Remember I was saying Thursday was probably going to be the day. GFS is saying, nah, man, it's going to be Friday now. It takes this little baby tropical system and actually gets it into Saturday and makes a technical landfall as a 1,007 millibar low pressure into like Wilmington, the Myrtle Beach area now. At the same time, you got a low pressure popping up down here in the Bay of Campeche again. And whatever that is makes a landfall. And another low trying to pop up down here. There's a lot of little to medium things going on here. Now, the significant flooding that can be caused from this area in the Bay of Campeche into the Gulf of Mexico is not low to medium. I mean, that could be a significant deal here. But there's some confusion out here. And if we look at the European kind of does something similar like the GFS does, but it doesn't really consolidate energy like the GFS up here close to Texas. In fact, for Wednesday morning, it still has most of the moisture really confined to the Texas coastline a few hours inland, and then it kind of creates a dominant low pressure further south earlier on. Same thing with the GFS. It's taking a lot of moisture right in here in the Southwest Atlantic, but man, it is really grown into a weaker. It's almost getting nothing. A lot of dry air. At the same time, you guys, you got to realize that this area of energy is affecting this too. It's actually kind of like backlashing or tail whipping this energy too, and helping to aid in yanking in a lot of dry air into this area. So it's kind of affecting it in a way. I think Levi from Tropical Tidbits explained it the best. It's kind of giving it, man, I'm trying to think of the term for it. It's kicking my butt though, but it's affecting it. And there's a lot of dry air either way getting pushed into the system. And I think dry air is really what's affecting this, what's making this area trend weaker. And the Euro really just has this as nothing. And it just takes a plume of moisture more so into Mexico and southern Texas on the European. And then we just have to watch other areas of energy too. Here's another one kind of emerging into the Gulf of Mexico. But, you know, you look at the signal, and this is per the European ensemble. Make sure that is correct. Yeah, so this is the European ensemble. It still has a couple of low pressures showing up here. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like 10 lows out of 50 plus members showing up on here. So, you know, 20% of the members are showing a low pressure developing from this, but man, the guidance has really dropped off from this. Now we head on down to the Bay of Campeche, the Gulf of Mexico. Now this is between now and the next, the 48 hours. Now there's a lot more L's showing up on your screen. So a lot more members out of the 51 members are showing up now, and basically this has a much higher chance of developing into something, a depression. We still haven't even got a tropical depression yet, or tropical storm, which would take Alberto. So chances of a tropical storm developing has actually dropped since the run yesterday, but we still got that's a 60 to 70% chance of a tropical storm developing per the European ensemble. So we'll watch that. There's still a chance. Either way, like we mentioned, this is going to bring a big plume of tropical moisture into Texas. I mean, this is getting into Tuesday night. See this green? That's a lot of tropical moisture. The brown is a lot of dry air, a lot of moist air. See, especially on the north side of this low, this is yanking in a lot of moisture out the east here and pushing it into the west, especially into South Texas, where your precipitation values will be 2 to 3 inches. Which means the atmosphere will be super saturated, squeezing out all that tropical moisture. So a big flooding threat could really get going. And, you know, speaking of how much rain could fall, this is per the National Weather Service between now and just Wednesday morning, guys, just the next couple days. Houston going for around 4 to 5 inches of snow, almost said snow. You hear that? 4 to 5 inches of rain. And then we go down to Corpus Christi, maybe, a little bit more. Brownsville, a few inches of rain. And then we actually go a little bit further inland, guys. You know, I know areas, I think I saw a comment saying San Antonio is starting to get really dry. I think a lot of rain is coming for you guys, an opportunity for a lot of rain. How far north does this rain get? That's a big question. If you look at the blend of all models, and let's look at the entire state of Texas here. You know, it actually gets some of this rain all the way up to almost Amarillo, but it looks like the entire southern half of Texas good for at least a few inches of rain. But the further south you get, the more rain you're going to get. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful Monday, and I'll talk to you again soon.